kills me. Talk about persuasive. Really, I was on the fence about Trump, but then I decided to really listen to one of the great generational leaders of American pop culture. And the clenched fists at the end, that really drove it home. It looked like he was pressing a 2-pound weight in a Jenny Craig commercial.
Oh, my God.
Look at it again. It's so cute. It's like he found out the restaurant serves Jell-O, or that he won a $10 scratch-off, or he scored a cameo in Jersey Shore, or he had his first #2 in a week. Thank you, Fibercon. What a sad end for a great actor. He went from Raging Bull to this.
Robert De Niro walked into the wrong roast, and Greg Gutfeld and Megyn Kelly delivered the flamethrowers. Hollywood's loudest granddad tried to throw punches, only to be met with facts, irony, and a sprinkling of espresso-fueled rage. Consider. To media assassins teaming up with a man who thought taxi drivers were still important, buckle up. This takedown has more twists than De Niro's eyebrows when he hears the word responsibility. You will not believe how severely wrecked everything was at first. Robert De Niro used to terrify the screen.
What about the garbage outside today? Robert De Niro, officially sent by the Biden campaign, makes himself look like an idiot and reminds us why Trump is so popular.
It's so stupid. It was colossally stupid. If you're going to send somebody to go speak outside of the Trump trial, make it someone who's universally beloved, like a Michelle Obama. You know, she's not universally loved. She's not loved on the right. But I'm saying, like, at least within the left and the center left, and maybe even some center righties. Robert De Niro has gone so hard partisan over the past 8 years. He is like example #1 of Trump derangement syndrome.
He was the one you didn't cross. The one who gives you the look, simmers, and delivers a lengthy, measured speech before burying you in cinematic cement. But he is no longer the mafia's boss. He's the guy who yells at birds in Central Park, raises his hands at clouds, and wonders why the Oscars don't double as political rallies.
See, I find that he's smartest when they drop his audio. But, you know, it's kind of sad because you can see, like, people who are stuck in some kind of, I don't know, derangement, they can't see it themselves. And they're not surrounded by people telling them that they have a problem. And they lack self-awareness because everybody either tells them they're wonderful or wants to sell them cocaine. So he has no clue what he's doing. And he's upset over the emotional nature. His anger is emotional about Trump. It's nothing practical.
Greg Gutfeld took one look at the transformation and said, "Nope, we're not letting this one slide," because although De Niro's performance in Taxi Driver improved like a fine wine, his real-life manner degraded like a reheated meatball left in the sun. Gutfeld, never one to allow a tantrum to go uncontrolled, saw a fantastic opportunity. A once-acclaimed actor with a skull full of sound bites and a heart full of hatred, blindly attacking everything that breathes red state oxygen.
Lawrence O'Donnell's 5 years younger than Trump. And Rachel Maddow's been dressing the same for 20 years, like Wally Cleaver, the same clothes. And the star of Dirty Grandpa, Robert De Niro, getting censored by The View after raging like a bull who saw a red MAGA hat.
Gutfeld doesn't dislike actors. He just likes them when they're acting rather than holding press conferences in the middle of breakfast, sweating through their brows, telling America how to vote while their minions Google Vermont's capital for them. Gutfeld's whole brand is based on highlighting the difference between the glitterati and the bottom floor. And De Niro essentially handed himself up on a silver platter, ranting about democracy while oblivious to his current situation.
Example #1 of Trump derangement syndrome. He's one of those, I'm moving to Canada if he wins, and he's never going to leave the White House if he wins. We're going to have Trump forevermore. I mean, hello, I hate to break it to you because I realize you're advanced age too, Robert, but people die. So he will leave. One way or the other, he's going to go. And in the not too distant future, even if Trump says he shouldn't have to. But in any event, he didn't do that the last time, Paul. Can you really picture a scenario in which Trump is more determined to hold on to power than he was at the last time in 2020, going into 2021? And what did he do ultimately? He left.
For Greg, this is not rebellion. It is self-parody. De Niro deviated so far from the script that he no longer plays the character. He's become a caricature, and Gutfeld, a guy with a weekly monologue and no chill, saw it as an open invitation to give De Niro the roast he had. Never asked for but obviously earned, Gutfeld examined the De Niro phenomenon like a surgeon on Red Bull, outbursts, unexpected wrath convulsions at black tie events, and a furrowed brow in perpetual resistance mode. Gutfeld described him as a walking politician Yelp review. Only 1 star among way too many caps capture moments. The man who could once silence a room with a glance is now unable to finish a sentence without shrieking at the ghost of a presidential tweet. That's where the comedy appears. Because this is a guy who played Vito Corleone's successor and couldn't handle a Q&A, Gutfeld seized on every emotional outburst as if it were free cake. He didn't even need to embellish. De Niro had already done all the hard work. Every press appearance is more insane than the last. Every sentence is a dramatic reading of the Constitution given by a caffeine-deprived Broadway understudy.
Kind of what Jesse said, but not really. You know, De Niro kind of represents Hollywood in the sense that they realize that they're losing influence with the public, and that's what's generating the emotional response. They've never felt less important.
It just doesn't it feel like 2016 again? Like we lived through that. Did they forget?
Yeah.
Gutfeld saw De Niro's angry rants not as bold resistance, but as tired theatrics political outrage recycled. So often it now feels like a desperate audition, while Gutfeld mocked, Megyn Kelly dissected. With cold precision, she didn't see De Niro as a joke, but as a cautionary tale celebrity ego inflated beyond substance. His moral grandstanding had become so predictable, it lost all impact.
Nothing at all. Nothing redeemable in him. He's a sociopathic, psychopathic, malignant narcissist.
That could be tough for an actor to play such a hateful man. Someone like, I don't know, like Bernie Madoff, say. A guy who stole $65 billion from nuns and Holocaust survivors like Elie Wiesel and was sentenced to 150 years in prison.
Megyn highlighted the contrast between real power and performative outrage. Once a master of method acting, De Niro now lashes out without understanding the issues. She called it emotional cosplay rage without reason, passion without purpose. His credibility, she argued, had eroded into noise, with his once commanding presence reduced to viral memes and public.
Last night, an elderly, confused man went missing in New York. Luckily, a band of self-satisfied elitists found him babbling on the street, threw some pants on him, gave him a stage.
Oh my God.
I'm going to say one thing. Trump.
So Greg has a flamethrower, and Megyn has a scalpel. One hurled insults like a stand-up comic on an espresso binge. The other sliced reputations like a sushi chef with a grudge. Separately, they were lethal. Together, they were a public relations meteor that shattered the idea of Robert De Niro's political profit. It was hardly a coordinated attack. It was essentially a combination of exhaustion and the knowledge that the emperor wasn't only naked, he was running around award ceremonies with a megaphone, shouting at traffic. De Niro had become a parody of resistance, a cacophony of sound without a single ray of light. Greg and Megyn didn't even need to make it to De Niro's drop, which was as dramatic as a Shakespearean tragedy. However, with fewer soliloquies and more screaming clashes with phantom opponents, they just pulled the curtain back. And when they did, what they saw was not a cultural titan, but someone who used to dominate the screen but could no longer command a unified thought. Greg presented him as a boomer YouTuber who strayed via Twitter and never returned. Megyn researched him as a failed thesis in a graduate school seminar. Too loud, chaotic, and arrogant, it wasn't hostility, but rather perplexity. How can someone go from being a legendary actor to raving about the news like a sensitive Facebook commenter?
To the people shouting him down like, your movies suck. That's not true.
No, his movies are
don't
very good.
Suck. He's one of the greatest actors. I mean, he's the heir apparent to Brando, blah, blah, blah. But he's a loon.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to just say what he is. He's, he has, basically, I describe this to people. You know what's happening now? Because people are aware about concussions and the problems with
CTE.
CTE. When you get hit and you get a dinger in football, they put you in the blue tent. you know, and the sideline.
Yeah.
That's what needs to happen to Democrats. They need to go in the blue tent for a little bit, kind of, you know, get your eyes checked and then come out and be rational again.
Yeah, cool off
and
a
De
little.
Niro needs to go in the blue tent.
At the core of this roast is the downfall of Robert De Niro, not for having opinions, but for turning thoughtful dissent into recycled outrage. Once a legend of subtle power, he's now a shouting echo chamber, mistaking noise for relevance. Gutfeld and Megyn expose how celebrity influence has withered into empty theatrics. De Niro hasn't been cancelled, he's just being tuned out. Like an old radio station no one listens to anymore.
Robert De Niro graced the knitting circle in hell known as The View, where he tried to link random thoughts into a sentence. Joy was there to wind him up, since he's played some of the most unredeemable characters.
You have played some of the most really unredeemable characters. Travis Bickle. Travis Bickle was a psychopathic taxi driver. Jake LaMotta, who used to beat his wife, and he was in The Raging Bull. Is Trump worse than they are?
To me, he is.
Now more rant than reason, De Niro has aged into a caricature, loud, bitter, and stuck in a cycle of public meltdowns. His legacy, eroded tweet by tweet. Gutfeld mocks the chaos. Megyn dissects the decay. She doesn't need punchlines, just facts. De Niro's brilliance, once undeniable, has faded into static. What remains is a man who mistakes volume for value, shouting over substance, and slowly parodying himself.
So Robert De Niro, who's got a severe case of the TDS, is in Conference right now, as all of the muckety-mucks are. And he's very unhappy about what Trump is doing to try to keep filmmaking, American filmmaking, in America by slapping tariffs on foreign-made films so that he can basically try to force people to make them domestically again for the American audience that they're meant to serve. And here's what De Niro said on Tuesday.
America's Philistine president has had himself appointed head of one of our premier cultural institutions. He has cut funding and support to the arts, humanities, and education.
This isn't a redemption arc. It is the inverse. Most stars soften with age, but De Niro went all out, setting the whole Hollywood memory book on fire and dancing around it like a cranky pagan ritual. There is no response, only combustion. The audience did not expel him. They departed the theater. They're not unhappy, they're tired. They've seen this act before, but this time there are no Oscars or standing ovations, just eye rolls and exit doors. And here is when the microphone drops begin. Greg ends the book with a comment so cutting that it may need a trigger warning. If Robert De Niro is the Resistance's voice, then the Resistance needs subtitles. He doesn't stop there. With a smug smile that could be copyrighted, he suggests we replace the Irishman with the angry man after 3.5 hours of yelling, pacing, and forgetting what the original objective was. Megyn stands poised and lethal, delivering a last line worthy of being etched in stone. You may be a legend or just loud, rarely both. It's the sort of closer that whispers rather than bellows, and it's 10 times as bad. She doesn't even seem angry, just disappointed, like a person who expected sophistication but received cable access drama.
Being an actor is tough. For how does one handle real life without a script? Not equipped to think analytically, you're left powerless when observing your own predictions about life turn out wrong. It's not supposed to be this way, De Niro thinks. Only the cool guys get to win. Sorry, Bob. That's only in the movies.
As the screen fades, De Niro's rant ends with veins bulging and spittle flying, while Greg laughs and Megyn rolls her eyes, an exclamation point on a legacy in decline. Once a film icon, De Niro now plays a B-list role in his own political unraveling. Greg delivers punchlines, Megyn dissects inconsistencies. They aren't attacking, they're diagnosing. De Niro isn't dangerous, just loud, and even noise. Fades, Greg dares him to yell again. Megyn calmly reminds us that true intelligence doesn't need to shout.
Clearly has thought about this, more so than his career. His choice of roles is now down to cinnamon and lobster. He was then asked about the Trump kids. At least he doesn't want my kids to take this the wrong way.
Clearly considered this more important than his work. His options for roles are now restricted to cinnamon and lobster. He was then questioned about Trump's children. At the very least, He doesn't want my children to understand this incorrectly. Robert De Niro may still believe he is the final voice in the room, the conscience of America, the guy who speaks out when others won't. But outside of the Hollywood echo chamber, it's beginning to look a lot like a repeat no one asked for. Greg and Megyn don't have to ruin you when your most impassioned moments are indistinguishable from a parody skit and your rants sound like rejected monologues from a political SNL segment. You've already dealt the destruction on your own. They just gave the popcorn.
So what do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. And if you don't want to miss out on the hottest celebrity news, make sure to subscribe to Daily Finder.